Welcome back to Gospel First. Today we're going to cover Matthew chapter 14, Mark 6, and part of John 6. Now, have you ever tried to get away because your heart was just too tired? Not tired, I need a nap. Tired, I need a minute just to breathe. And then life follows you. Needs show up. People need you. Family needs you. And you think, Lord, I can't do one more thing today. Now, if you ever felt that, Matthew chapter 14 is going to feel painfully real and surprisingly hopeful. So let's begin. Now, Matthew chapter 14 opens with heartbreak. John the Baptist has just been killed. And when Jesus hears the news, Matthew says in verses 13 that Jesus withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Now, that is such a human line. Jesus withdraws. He tries to find a quiet place. But then, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. That's in verse 14. Now, I want to sit with that for a second. Jesus here is grieving, and still he's moved with compassion. Not because grief disappears, but because love is still stronger. And then evening comes, and the disciples are practical. They say, in effect, send the crowd away so that they can get food. But Jesus answers in verse 16, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. That sentence is both impossible and deeply personal. Because most days, I feel like the disciples. Lord, this need is bigger than me. And then Jesus says, bring me what you have. They tell him what they have. We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's verse 17. Jesus takes the small offering, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets of broken pieces that were left over. That's in verse 20. So here we see that everyone eats, everyone is satisfied, and there is overflow. Now here's a story that fits what is being taught. So I'm going to try to make this really practical. I once watched someone serve through a season when they absolutely did not have the emotional budget for it. A friend had lost someone close, and they did what many of us do. They tried to keep going, but you could see the grief behind their eyes. Then someone in their circle got hit with a crisis. Not dramatic, not public, just real. A family need, a hospital visit, a meal, a ride. Can you please help me? My friend told me later, I wanted to just disappear. I wanted to be left alone. But I said yes to one small thing. And weirdly, that one small thing kept me from collapsing into myself. They said, I didn't feel strong. I felt like all I could give was what I had in me. But when I put it into the Lord's hands, it was enough for the moment. That is not a slogan. That is a lived principle. Sometimes God does not remove the need from your day. Sometimes he multiplies what you bring. Next, we're going to pivot to the miracle after the storm. Jesus does something that might surprise all of us. He sends the disciples ahead in the boat. Then in Matthew chapter 14, verse 22, it says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him. Then, after he had dismissed them, he went up onto a mountainside by himself to pray. That's in verse 23. He wanted and needed solitude, and he returned to it. Jesus was not pretending to be endlessly resilient. He just prayed. Then comes the storm, and the timing really matters. In verse 25, it says, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. Before dawn, that fourth watch feeling when you have been fighting for hours and you're exhausted. The disciples are terrified. Jesus speaks, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. That's in verse 27. And Peter says something really bold. Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. That's in verse 28. And Jesus answers, come. That's in verse 29. And then Peter gets out of the boat and walks on the water, and he starts to look at the wind, and he sinks. Now here's the part I never want to rush. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. Now, did you catch that? The word is immediately. So here's my invitation for you today. If you're grieving, bring him what you have, even if it feels small. If you're overwhelmed, bring him what you have, even if it feels embarrassingly small. If you're in the storm, call out the prayer that Peter prayed. Lord, save me. And please notice this. Peter's rescue was not delayed until Peter proved he deserved it. Jesus immediately caught him. That is Christ's grace. Not just strong, but quick. Not just powerful, but personal. So if you remember one thing from this segment, remember this. When your strength is small and the need is huge, Jesus does not shame the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He multiplies it. And when you start to sink, he doesn't lecture you from a distance. He just reaches for you. So that's it for today. Thank you for staying faithful to the journey. May the Spirit continue to fill your heart and draw you closer to Jesus Christ. And once again, if your heart feels even a gentle nudge, I invite you to subscribe and share so that we can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ together. And I'll see you next time as we continue our studies of John chapter 5 and 6. Until then, God bless.